Hi guys, good evening. Thanks for joining the session. So we are starting right about now. So my name is Eugene Adavare and welcome to Design with You. So for those that don't know, Design with You is a weekly session that basically brings designers from all over different fields of design and have them interact with the community to basically upscale, help designers grow in different aspects of design. So this week we are having Victor, known as Zuriks, to basically talk about motion in design. So basically, Victor is a designer based in Nigeria. His specialty is in visual UI design, UX design, user-centered design. He's passionate about fintech, AR, and then lifestyle industry design, basically. So he works at Patricia Technologies, but before product design, he was an illustrator and 2D motion designer. So for the next couple of minutes, we'll have Victor talk about motion for UI designs. So Victor, Zuriks, the floor is yours.
All right, awesome. Can I share my screen?
Yes, let me stop sharing now.
Okay. Um, let's see. Okay. Can I share my screen?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. All right. So, like Eugene already said, right? Welcome everyone to today's session, and I'm going to be talking about motion for UI design. Um, it's a hot topic in the design space because there are a lot of things involved, and it's it has a lot of impact when it comes to usability and enhancing experience. So, my name is Victor, but mostly call me Zuriks in the design space. Um, where the name came from was my son name anyways. My full name is Victor Zurike. So I'm a product designer, but I do wear some hats depending on what's required. One of it is being an illustrator, and this is part of my early days as a designer. Um, sorry. So this is part of my early days as a designer, right? I started designing in the illustration space and also doing a bit of motion design before I then dive into product design fully. And with the experience of being a motion designer allowed me to explore interaction design and bringing emotion into UI basically. So enough about myself. Let's dive into why we're here. So let's structure my talk today. We first started off with what I call emotion design 101. Basically, it's like just introducing the idea behind motion design and why why we're actually having motion in the UI in the first place. Another thing, we're talking about benefits, motion design. Um, then we're looking into principles that should be applied when dealing with motion. We'll talk about different types, the anatomy, the tools, and then lastly, we'll just talk about of certain interactions to engineers development. So yeah, before I move on, I just want to illustrate this quote that I found, and I really like. It says that with motion design, you can make a brand more human, evolving from static to dynamic and giving a personality. And this makes a lot of sense, right? Because if you adding motion to anything gives that thing life in a way. And if you look at like taking away, moving away from the digital space and moving much like natural space, most everything it moves and has motion to it. And if you bring that knowledge into digital space, it enhances usability and experience in general. So, motion design 101. So, motion design in UI is the functional elements that is used in giving feedback, keyword feedback, to actions and help users to understand an application's hierarchy and flow of information. So, motion design has several, advantages when applied properly into the experience. It will make your app stand out, make your app feel much sophisticated and unique, and it when users make use of the app, they ideally have the sense that a lot went into development, and the fact that animation was considered, you'll see a lot about the app and the product in general. And it increases user satisfaction, basically. So next up is some of the benefits of motion in UI. Like I said earlier, right, it delights users, and it delights them not just on a surface level, but also on a deeper level. Ideally, there are two types of delights. There's the surface delight and then there's the deeper delight. So surface delight is much on the local and contextual base where it's made to wow the user, right? First intention, first impression, sorry. And one a deep delight is basically when your app is doing what it's supposed to do and serving its purpose. But motion is one that enhances all types of delights, right? Another thing is it helps communicate ideas, and this is like when you're working with the team with other designers or PMs and engineers and different stakeholders. When you create prototypes and animation for the interfaces, adding animation to them or creating prototypes will ideally help you communicate ideas better because it moves the idea of staying static pages, right, to interface that people can interact with. Another thing that it helps your app stand out, or application stand out, product stand out from the crowd, the competition. And lastly, it expresses brand personality. So, depending on your brand, and this will go back to like the initial process, the beginning process of your design your product, where you actually talk to users and get the idea or sense of some of their personalities and demographics, right? And in a way to influence how you design your product and also how you animate certain things. If your app was one where it requires users to be more calm while using it, ideally you put that into consideration when animating certain components or making certain transitions. But if it's one where the experience is supposed to be vibrant, then the transitions and animations will be different. So when not use animation, ideally, right, we designers sometimes, when we have this knowledge of animation or we have this skill set, we can fall into the trap of wanting to animate everything we see. Like once you design one mad screen like this now, in your mind is like, let me just animate this thing and make it dope and all. But before you go into that, I'll just advise you to like, take some time to really think about why you're doing this and what you want to achieve doing it, right? Having that of animating or having knowledge of animating can be very useful when applied correctly, but it can also be destructive and distractive to the experience of the user. So you should take your time, right, to really know why and the purpose of having animation into your experience. So some principles of UI animation, or motion design and animation. One is that it's informative, another is focused, and lastly, it's expressive. Um, so it's informative, right? Motion design informs users by highlighting relationship between elements. And you can see that with this little this GIF, right? This animation here. And ideally, I got this from material design, um, Google's material design library, anyways. So basically, what this is saying is that, when you're dealing with motion design, you help inform your users about relationships. And there are several like real life applications of it. One of it is Instagram stories, for instance. And when you click on the story, what happens, the next action, the reaction of that trigger. And then you have several stories lined up together. And these stories, these elements are related in a way because of where they are placed and because of how they interact or how they respond when the user interacts with them. Another thing that it's focused, motion focuses attention on what's important without creating unnecessary distraction. Now, this leads back to what I was saying earlier when animating, right? You should be careful when you want to animate certain things so that you don't distract users from the intended purpose or the real reason why they are using certain things. Um, One app that really does this, right, is Google Maps and Bolt, where there's a point during the experience they tend to like focus attention on your location, and that's helpful because it allows the user, be more aligned to what they're actually there for and why they are using the app. Next up is expressive, which one celebrates moments and user journeys and add characters to common interaction. I can express a brand style. Um, and ideally, you get to this, during like end of the process, for instance, let's say you want to perform a transaction, and at the end you get like success or failure screen. Animating those screens can go a long way, right, in affecting the emotions when users interact with products. Um, so yeah. Next up is the types of motion. So there are ideally three types. One of them is fundamental motion. The next is emotional motion and structural motion. Before I move on, can everyone hear me? Let me just make sure I'm not talking to myself.
Yes, we can.
Okay, awesome. So, sorry. Oh, okay. So there are three types of motion, right? There's functional motion, emotional, and structural. Functional motion is one that is based off action. Um, and ideally, you can see them in several examples. When you click on something, when you hover on something, or you swipe on something, right? You ideally get to see this kind of motion. And the little animation here shows uh, the functional motion and where it's applied. And like you can see here in the sign-up form, while the user is interacting with the form and they click on sign up, what happens after that? Next up, you can see also different examples of functional motion. Um, this is more of like a swiping motion. And then this one is more like a drag to hold type of motion. Then next up is emotional. Uh, this one basically is all about moments of delight in the experience. It comes in with probably like character animation or um, animating an icon or basically just animating certain components in a way that brings about delight to users. And we have an example here. Yeah, this is an app that sends invoice, and during the end of the process, you get to see that that shows that the invoice has been sent. It gives the user that feedback that the user an invoice has been sent. And there are also other examples of emotional animation in action. Here's the character animation, and then this is also a character animation gotten from different sources. Lastly, the structural motion. Now, structural motion is one where elements of like move.
Sorry, who's that?
All right. Can I move on?
Yes, please.
Okay. So structural motion is one where elements sort of like go on and off on the screen or on the interface. So you see this an example like drop downs. Um, yeah. So there's an example here where there's there's a loading screen and then the success indicator, and that brings about sort of like a change in the overall structure of the component. And yeah, this is an example, an ideal example of structural motion. And in essence, this motion should also feel natural in a way where you have to get certain things right. The timing should be okay, the transitioning should be perfect. And yeah, so that makes the animation a lot more smoother and looks right and feels nice basically. There are other examples of structural motion, but the left you can see one here where the user clicks on or taps on a particular icon at the top, and then it shapes off to bring about this component, right? This is also an example where you click on a particular email, and then it's responds by bringing out details of that email and changing the structure. So, in my opinion, great motion is one that combines the certain different types. You could have a combination of structural and emotional. You can have a combination of functional and emotional. But ideally, right, great motion is one that is able to bring these types of motion together. So next up is the anatomy of emotion design or UI animation. And ideally, there are four different types, or anatomy rather. One is the trigger, and this is basically what causes the animation to happen. And it could be like a mouse over, or a tap, or a hold, or a click, or a scroll, or a page load. Another thing is the easing, and this is how elements move up and down, right, depending on how the intended action, right, and rather than them moving in a constant rate. Next up is the timing, and this is how long animation to take, basically. And lastly is the response, and this is what happens when a trigger is placed on an element. Here are just quick examples of some of this anatomy in play. By the left here, you see that certain trigger is clicking on the checkbox, right? And with that, the response is probably a selected bar comes up, right? And also, if you look closely, this example has a combination of the different types because they click on send an invite. At the end of the process, there is a little animation that comes up right at the end. But right here, you also get to see some of this anatomy in play, where when you click on or tap on the button, you get to see a response, right? And all these, if you look closely, they all feel natural, they all feel right, they are probably well done, and yeah. So part of the anatomy, and I'll really be talking much on easing because out of all four of different anatomy, easing is one that's really important for animators to take note of because if you don't get your easing right, it can affect the way things will move. And basically, the easing can be seen in three main ways: the curve, the delay, and the duration. And I just put up this example right here, um, showing how this easing can be put into play based on the different curve angles and their delay and duration and how they behave really. But if you want to have a lot deeper insight into certain easing, and ideally there are lots of them, but we're just going to talk about six that we have on the screen, or seven rather. I didn't put linear. So we have linear easing, and that is just an element moving from one point to another without any adjustments to its position or time. But we have an ease in ease as a type of easing where the elements or the objects slows down from the start and then while ending it speeds up. For ease out, the element moves fast from the start and then slows down at the ending. For ease in, ease out, the element moves a bit faster, slows down at the start, moves in a bit quicker, and then slows down at the ending. Right? And these are all based on the position and time. Like I said earlier, right? The curve, the duration, and the delay are all involved and all have a role to play when it comes to how certain ease applied to an object. For ease in and out back curve, it's one where the position is tampered with in a way, and it gives the element this sort of bouncy start, right? Where it starts off in a bouncy way, moves on quickly, and then ends in a bouncy way as well. And this is because if you look closely, the curve has been adjusted, right? In the sense that the position now takes up extra pixels and then returns back to its natural state. The next up is out back, and this sort of like starts off quickly, right, and then ends in a slow animation, in a slow speed, really. And it's while slowing down, right, there's also some adjustments to its position. Lastly is the easing back, and This also, similar to is in and out backward, where the position is tampered with, right, and adjusted. And elements also has the same bouncy start, right, and then while it moves up in a faster manner, right, and then that's it. Um, so yeah, next up is the tools for animation and prototyping and motion in general. So there are a lot of tools to be honest out there, but I just highlighted this set. Um, I have this soft spot for After Effects, and that's why it's here. And some other honorable mentions, right? Figma is also here. I think we're XD because I don't I don't really like it, and I think it's stressful. But we have certain apps right here, right? The Studio, Framer, Origami, Close by, Principal, Flinto, Figma, and After Effects. I'm going to talking about just a couple of them, not all of them, and just like highlighting certain pros and cons for the different tools. I also attached a link here. Let me just quickly show you. So this has other tools, right? And I found this link on YouTube. So it listed out other tools in that handle motion design and prototyping and animation. And in terms of like their fidelity, ease of use, and time to learn and price as well. And I think it's really helpful, right? I'll probably share that later after the talk for anyone that wants to look at them and probably like experiment and see what certain apps are made of and what they can handle. But yeah, back to this. So first off is Studio, Visual Studio. I know that everyone should know this, or most people should know Visual Studio. And it's one where it has several pros and cons. I've used it a couple of times in creating certain interaction. And one of it that I really like, one of the pros and ones I really like about Studio is the fact that there's a timeline editor for custom timeline I'm using. And developers can easily get animation values and properties due to this using and how it's applied. And last is an interactive prototyping tool. So that means users can actually make use of the prototypes that you make, right? And people can actually interact with certain components. The cons, you can't really export a video or GIF, none that I know of. There isn't really a 3D rotate. Figma is not quite supported, and you need to create new screen for every state. Another tool is After Effects, and this is the tool that I use a lot, and I have a soft spot for. And there's several pros to it, and also cons as well. One of the pros is that it's easy to create 2D and 3D UI animation and transitions. If you check out Dribble, there are a lot of them out there. It works seamlessly with Adobe tools like Photoshop and XD. You can easily, export Photoshop file, PSD file into After Effects without any stress. It supports Figma. Ideally, you have to make use of a plugin AUX to send in your Figma files into After Effects. And it works with Lottie. So anyone that doesn't know Lottie, Lottie is a tool that enables you export certain animation in form of JSON files that are useful for developers to implement certain interactions. So some of the cons, one is that it doesn't provide interactivity. That means you can't actually interact with the prototype or animation done with AE. So best is just viewing or watching the video if that has been exported. And the transitions, right, need not be grounded in reality. What that means that if you can easily make changes in After Effects, but some of these changes will depend on the kind of animation you are working on, right? It might be difficult for the developers to implement. And next up is Profile. I will use Profile a lot, to be honest. I think I tried testing it one time, but yeah. One thing that I really like is the fact that it's an interactive prototype, right? Ideally, it's available now for Windows, or initially it was just for Mac. Some of the cons is that it takes a lot of time to make prototypes, right? And it's not quite simple to learn. Well, this is one personal point of view. I didn't quite find profile easy to learn at first. So some examples of certain interaction using certain apps. For principal, we have just like a little interaction here, animation going on here. For profile, we also have some animation going on here, and I really like this kind of like swipe, um, liquid swipe effect. That's really cool. And it's interesting to see like what these apps can do and how far you can take things. Next up is the big guys, After Effects and InVision. I personally use After Effects a lot. Like I said earlier, I made this right using After Effects. And then for InVision Studio, we also have this. This was made by Joshua, and it's really cool animation. Um, with a lot of interaction going on across different continents. So yeah, lastly is handoff for your animations when you create them. And ideally, I hand off my designs or animation in two ways. One is having to export a video or a GIF, right? And then having the proper documents available for um, team members to take a look at, right? It's not like a central hub where people can make reference to. Um, and so that everyone will be on the same page when it comes to the interactions that we work on. And if they have feedback, you can also drop feedback there. I used to pick up for this, um, creating these documents anyways. And also, when it comes to like the documents, ideally, sometimes the video that is exported might not be enough for developers to really understand, the exact properties and exact way things are supposed to be animated. So it's usually helpful when you have that document and you list out certain properties. And these properties could be like the position of the elements, right? Duration, the delay attached to them, and most especially the type of easing that can be applied to these elements. So you can make use of certain presets, right? Probably like I said earlier, the ease in, ease out, ease in and out, or attached custom bases to how elements will animate. When you're making use of custom bases, you should put in the actual values for those bases because they would influence the way certain objects would animate really. For anyone that uses After Effects, I recommend Inspector Spacetime script. It's a script file that you install for After Effects, and it helps you get these values. So the way you do it is just highlight keyframes and then apply the script, and then the script will just do all the work for you and get the values, and then you can send it off to engineers. But ideally, you also want to communicate with them right from the start before you even start animating things, so that you just learn about capabilities, what's possible and what's not possible, right? You share ideas with them. Yeah, move on with the process. So ideally, that's basically it for this talk. I think I've touched all the different topics that I wanted to talk about. So yeah, thanks. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask.
Thanks a lot for that. So the floor is open now for questions. We have questions for Victor. You either unmute your mic or type it. Okay, Yusuf has a question. Go ahead, Yusuf. Okay then.
Hello, Victor.
Yeah, hi.
I am actually hoping you are going to like pull some stunts for us to like see some examples. I don't know whether
Sorry.
you have time. Like I was hoping you are going to like pull some stunts for us, like just to see some examples with the
Oh, okay.
particular tool you use.
Okay, in terms of like you want to see something interaction that I worked on.
Yes.
All right. Yeah, just give me one sec. Need to open After Effects. Or Okay. What do I show now? Okay, let's start with this. Everyone can see my screen, right? Hello?
We may have lost him for a bit, but let's just wait for a minute or two. I'm sure he's having network issues or something.
Yo, sorry about that. Is everyone still here? Can anyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, let me just share my screen again. Can anyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Um, so yeah, so this is a project I worked on like recently. This was around March or so. And ideally, what I was supposed to work on animate was a particular section of the app or the website that shows the transition between certain elements. And this is at this point of time, at this point during the animation. I think I should just share it with you instead. Because After Effects is going to take a lot of time to read up. Oops. Right. So, so this is like one of the like an example of certain type of interaction, and this is one I worked on recently. Um, so the idea was having this transition at this point on the website. So ideally, right, like I said earlier, certain anatomy involved in this, and we make sure that we satisfy these things. Um, so, for example, for this has the trigger of the page getting to a particular level, and then the animation will trigger. So once the page gets to this level, during the course of user scrolling, the animation triggers, and the response to that is these elements coming up in this way, having this transition, right? And now you have to now take into consideration the timing and the easing when it comes to how these elements will appear. And ideally, the timing for this is a bit slower, right? Because of the intent was having users to be able to read this content, right, before having the next transition happen. So, so yeah, this is one example, right? And this was purely made in After Effects. I can see here. And ideally, I had to share the video, right, to the team, just to get approval and also the term, like documenting certain things, right? And like I said, during my documentation, I usually add up the custom practices of how different elements will animate. And let me just show you the way I do this. So if you go over to this composition right here, sorry, lots of compositions. Yeah. So there are a lot of keyframes, right? Lots of elements going on. They all animate in different ways at different intervals. So in order to get the properties, individual properties, if you select an element, let's say um, this now, this text 90 plus NPS, right, which is this, yeah, which is this, you get to see the keyframes. You use spreadsheet, you get to see the keyframes, right? And the way I did it was based on an offset that I applied on the particular text. So these are the keyframes. And if I select them and I go out to window, down here to, I did, you have to have installed the script or downloaded the script. It's free. You can get it online. Just search inspector space time script and you see it. And once you install that, right, I think you have to restart your After Effects and then you get to see the script here. So if I click on this script, right, while selecting these keyframes, um, need it to load up. Oh, I'm going to up already. So, sorry. Yeah. So here's the script. Like as you can see, these are the different properties. Now here is the name of the layer. Um, just like how you see here, plus 15% dash 2. Same thing you can see here. Now here is the property and its values. So an offset was applied to the text, the duration of the animation, and the easing values. And you can get it right if you attach like cubic bases to it. And then lastly is the delay. So this is basically how you can get, these properties right, exactly how you want them, and then you send it off to devs to implement. And yeah, one more thing, right? While working on the particular project, like my portfolio, for example, I had to make use of this technique because uh, there's certain animations that I wanted to work on, and um, I had to do some interactions for the first before taking it down to Webflow to build. So, because of I was kind of like the designer, developer, it gave me the experience of how just to understand how developers actually make use of these values. So yeah, I guess that answers the question. Or
I guess so. So Yusuf is asking, um, okay, first off is Faith. Faith is saying she'd like to know if After Effects is a free tool or you have to pay for it to use it.
sorry, can you come again? After Effect is what?
If it's a free tool or you have to pay for subscription to use it.
Oh, well, After Effects you have to pay to use it. So there's a way of getting it free. Um, and that depends on like your device. If you're using a Mac or Windows, so there's a little trick behind it, but it's one where you have to get or go to like some torrent sites to find a way of downloading it. But yeah, so
Okay,
it's free and it's not free at the same time. It's free and it's not free at the same time.
I hope Faith gets that.
Sorry?
I hope Faith gets that.
Yeah.
So Yusuf is saying he missed some parts, so but he's working on a project which entails animation, but he has no knowledge of After Effects or any animation tool. So he used GIFs. So you talk about documentation, but you couldn't get what you said. So how can
Okay.
I document animation so developers can implement it easily.
Oh, sorry, can you come again? I didn't get the last part. You say you uses GIFs
Yeah, he
to.
uses GIFs because they have no knowledge of After Effects or any
Oh,
animation
okay.
tool.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's
So,
one.
okay.
Then he
So
was
if
okay. Go on.
yeah, so like if you only just make use of GIFs, right, and videos to like export your stuff and communicate them, it's fine in a way. But while you're making that animation or interaction, right, you need to pay attention to those that anatomy of the interaction that you're doing, right? You need to pay close attention to it because it goes a long way to how your work will actually look like and how it will feel like. It will look a lot more smoother when um, you're animating it in the right way or the animation sort of like feels right. So basically, right, pay attention to those and that anatomy. And then for documenting, when you want to document, basically just have document that has all the resources that you need, that everyone would need or that you're working on, right? And also results. Put everything there. If you're using Lottie and you have a JSON file, put everything there, right? List out all the different interactions you worked on and you know the videos or GIFs that you worked on and share them all together. If you don't, but if you don't have access to like the individual properties and all, it's fine. Well, in a way, you might not exactly get the right result with developers unless maybe you communicate to them clearly, right? And you get regular feedback from them. They are very close to like how they work. Then, in a way, you could implement this. You can implement it in the right way. But ideally, right, getting those properties go a long way. Just exporting them and sending it to them. Also, still communicating how you would want anything to move. It would be helpful. But if you don't have that, right, it's still fine exporting the data file, the video. But just make sure that you communicate with them, right, and everyone is clear on how to do things will work. So
I hope Yusuf gets that. So Mebude is saying he's asking now if Premiere Pro can be used for interaction animation as well.
Premiere Pro, yeah. The Premiere Pro is also too. It's similar to After Effects in a way, but it doesn't give you that interactivity. But you can also use it. But I've not used it before. But I've seen people recommend it.
Okay. Are there any books or recommendations to learn UI animation?
Yeah, there are some of them out there. Um, there are lots of resources for you. InVision has a lot of resources. You could check out Google Material Design. This library has a ton of resources for you to get started. You can also go to YouTube. There are certain designers there that are taking time to really talk about animation and how to go about with it. They talk about the tools needed as well for creating prototypes and animation. So yeah, there are a lot of resources. I'll share a couple of them with you during after this.
Okay then. So Aud is asking, is there a way we can create animations users can actually interact with on the prototype?
Yes, yeah, you can. So certain apps allow you to do that, right? With one is with InVision does that, right, allows you to do that. Framer does that as well. Because of the fact that they have this timer attached to them, it's really helpful when animating certain components. So they would ideally be needed, suitable, or they are capable of handling both animation and prototyping. But you have some limitations anyway, because if you want to move into like animations in the real space, then they can be limiting, but it's still possible to make use of them with animating and prototyping.
Basi is asking now, do you design and animate with After Effects, or is this possible to export Figma designs into After Effects for animations?
Yeah, so it's possible to export. So first off, I don't design with After Effects, just animate with After Effects. In exporting your designs from Figma to After Effects, you make use of this plugin called AEUX plugin. So that plugin helps you to export the designs from Figma straight up to After Effects. You just select layer, right? Once you've installed it, it's not. I don't think you don't find it in the community shop. You got to like actually install it. It's a special way of installing it. So once you install the plugin on Figma and select the frame, click on it, it takes that frame, right, and all the elements in it straight into After Effects. Let me see if I can quickly show how that works. One sec. Okay. This is- yeah. Okay, let's use this. Let's just use this on the phone. Well, yeah. So let's say I want to export this entire frame, right? So After Effects. I've already installed the AUX plugin. So as I right click and go to right. So I right click and go over to development here, plugins then developments. Here's the plugin AUX. So if I click on this, it tells me, it shows me an action, right? Send selection to AE. AE stands for After Effects. So if I click on that, it would ideally take all those elements from Figma, every single thing, and drop it in After Effects. It takes a bit of time to share sometimes, depending on how large the layer is. Oops. Yeah, so it's taking some time anyways. But it's still loading up. It takes a bit of time, Shah, depending on how large the frame that you're exporting is. But it's the one where it's just very little elements in it, it will quickly export it to After Effects. Oh, shucks. Let me just create a dummy. Add this plugin development AUX. Excellent. Okay, why isn't it working now? Well, yeah. So basically, that's it, Sharp. That's how you get to export Figma screen frames to After Effects. And if you go over to the project panel here, you get to see AUX as a folder, and everything that you exported would ideally be part of that frame. So basically, that's how you get to export your Figma file, the designs to After Effects.
Okay, the last question we'll be taking is someone is asking, how do you spell the plugin's name?
How do I?
Spell it ZAUX.
AEUX. AEUX.
Okay, could you please type it?
Okay. Um, AEUX. Guys, I'm chat.
Okay. So, are there any other questions? I think that's all we can take for the night. So, thanks a lot, Victor, for your session. It's been really insightful. So, I'll drop his handle now, so you guys could quickly just follow him for connection's sake. And his portfolio, which I found to be really, really intriguing, with lots of animations and stuff like that. Also, take a look here. So, like I said before, this is a weekly webinar series. So we have different speakers come on different topics. So next week we're having yet another speaker. So you could look at our YouTube channel for the recording of this session. It will be out during the week. And just follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn to get more updates. That'll be all for the night, guys. Have a good one. Thanks again, Victor.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I hope everyone at least got or learned something today, anyways.
Have a good night, guys.